Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Cannes 2017. I'm Michael Tomes. I'm the founder of Creativepool. I'd just like to thank Shutterstock for giving us the opportunity to have this debate today on hyperreality as the future of advertising. Before we start doing the debate, I wanted to invite Keishi up, who's going to run us through his film and talk us a little bit about what hyperreality really is.
Hey everybody, thank you for coming. I made Hyperreality and released it last year. I guess I've been kind of interested in technology for a long time and saw a kind of interesting shift happening, moving from technology being sort of these little devices that we kind of stare at and tap into, and moving towards something different. And I think that change is characterized by the move to smart cities and the Internet of Things, augmented and virtual reality, and these kind of technologies working together with, you know, wearables and all this other stuff happening at a similar time. Looks like it's taking us to a world where technology gets free and starts to become part of our environment and our everyday life. And of course, with that brings lots of new opportunities and possibilities, but it also brings lots of dangers. And I felt that most of the time when we were learning about what technology is, what it can do, what it's for, it was being presented to us by the people who are also trying to sell it to us. So I kind of thought there were lots of areas that were unexplored. So hyperreality is part of a very personal kind of research project of mine that I started 7-8 years ago during my Masters of Architecture, and I'm kind of continuing through. And yeah, Hyperreality is the most recent film, and I think it's really intended to create a conversation, create a debate. So I'm very happy today to have these people to be talking about the film. But I think, are we able to show it? Okay, fantastic, yeah.
Fantastic. Great. Nice. Great.
Más tarde, apúrate si quieres una buena calificación.
Voy lo más rápido que puedo.
¿Has pensado en correr? Es saludable y eficiente.
Seguro que no hay más trabajos disponibles. Yo estudié para ser profesora y estoy haciendo mercados.
Y además puedes quedarte con los puntos de fidelización. Eres una monje afortunada. Tienes que confiar en la aplicación. ¿Te sientes inspirada? Gracias. Chao.
¿Quién soy yo? No, eso no es lo que quiero decir. ¿Para dónde voy? No. Puedo volver a empezar. Olvídalo.
Estoy presente ahora. Me amo. Estoy libre de mi ira. Estoy libre de mi tristeza. Y el amor es mi tristeza.
Habla español.
Adiós.
Hola, me llamo María.
Bueno. Hola otra vez. Ay, no, cállate.
Queso. Queso de vaca. Queso de...
¿Qué está pasando?
Buen día, Emilio. ¿Qué puedo hacer por usted?
¿Qué está pasando? Mis puntos están bien.
No se preocupe. Sus puntos están seguros conmigo. ¿Le puedo ayudar en algo más, Emilio?
Yo no soy Emilio. Yo soy Juliana Restrepo.
Por favor, espere.
Hola, Juliana Restrepo. Me alegra verte. ¿Qué puedo hacer por ti?
Mis puntos están bien. ¿Qué está pasando?
Tranquila, todo está bien. Parece que alguien está intentando vulnerar su cuenta. Por favor, espere mientras reinicio su dispositivo. Hola, Juliana. Me alegra verte. Hoy te ves hermosa. ¿Estás estrenando zapatos?
Ya lo arreglaron. Tengo que seguir trabajando.
Estoy trabajando en eso, pero necesito verificar tu información biométrica. Por favor, sigue la línea azul hasta el centro de servicio más cercano para confirmar tu identidad.
Sí, pero mis puntos están bien.
Todo está bien. Chao.
¿Qué? ¿Qué es esto? ¿Qué? ¿Qué está pasando? No, mis puntos, mis puntos. ¿Qué hago? ¿Qué hago? ¿Qué es eso?
So that gives everyone an idea of what we're going to be going through today. So if I could just start to get who's on the plus and who's on the yes team and who's on the no? No's?
Yes.
Yes? No's, yes? Do you want to start by introducing yourselves?
Sure. I'm Terrence Morash, the creative director at Shutterstock.
I'm Kate Hironaka. I'm the Chief Strategy Officer at BeReal.
My name's Leo. I'm Chief Executive at Grey in London.
Christian Waitzinger, Executive Creative Director for SapientRazorfish in Continental Europe.
And I'm Tobias Wacker from Hasan and Partners in Helsinki in Finland, Creative Director.
Hi everyone, I'm Pat. I'm from Warsaw, Poland, and I'm an Associate Creative Director there.
Excellent. So shall we start with the yes team? Do we have anybody who wants to volunteer to start with their 2 minutes?
We are the no team.
You're the no team? You're already top of that.
So on the yes side, 10 years ago, there was this website that came out, it was close to 10 years ago, called Facebook. You may remember it. And at that time, I feel like 90% of my news feed on Facebook, or whatever we called it back then, was requests for goats, right? It was this frivolity of what the technology was bringing. But we see this cycle happening every time, right? The new technology comes out, and it often comes out of areas such as gaming, these sort of engagement pieces that are getting people familiar with the technology, but you don't start to see that technology come into its maturation until later. Just last week, I witnessed both seeing graduation photos from a friend. I witnessed conversations about mental health, conversations that never would have happened 10 years ago, where people were sharing information about what to do if you know someone who's depressed. This is the promise of what technology can be, but it takes a while before we really figure out what the potential of that technology is. Hyperreality is certainly, it's Keiichi's vision, right? This is one person's vision. It's sort of a bellwether of where we could go with this technology. And admittedly, it's not the world that I necessarily want to live in, this media-saturated world. But it does introduce this debate, this really important discussion to figure out what kind of content do we want to populate this world? How do we want to be interacting with each other? What is the promise of this technology? There's no doubt it's coming. It's here. And it's only going to get more and more pervasive. The technology gets cheaper. It gets more affordable. It gets more accepted. It wasn't too long ago that Google Glass was sort of like the sign that you're a geek and you can't wear that, right? Everyone was laughing about it. Now people walk around with Snapchat spectacles and people are fine with it. A few more years, we're all going to have the contact lenses, and then Elon Musk is going to be implanting us. This technology is here. We just need to figure out how we want to take part in this experience. And those of us who are up here, those of us who are really in Cannes this week, have a really important role, because we're going to be the ones leading the ongoing development of this, the development of content. What kind of information do we want to be serving to each other? Was that my time limit? All right, thank you.
Thanks very much. Pat, do you want to start for your team?
I think that the future advertising landscape presented in the film kind of shows a utopia for brands and advertisers, a magical place where they have direct access to consumers 24/7 with offers and blings and color and everything that they want. And I think that it is undeniable that it's coming, of course. And I think that brands will initially swarm this platform, and people initially will be excited by it, excited at the fact that we see all this shit around us all of the time. But I also think that very quickly the novelty will wear off, and very quickly it will become intrusive and annoying and overwhelming. And I think very quickly consumers will start to opt out of having brands invade their personal bubble and be very selective. And I think that that's also an opportunity for brands to start to get smart in how they use the technology. And I think that the ones that do it in this hyper way of being loud and bright and in your face and annoying, or do it badly, will be opted out of and drop off. And the brands that will remain on the platform and do it well will be the ones that do it discreetly, the ones that are there the moment that you want them to be there, using really great data, and the ones that add some kind of value, I guess, to your life. So I think it's coming, but I think the opt-out element is important. And if I'm walking down the street in the morning, I can't opt out of seeing the giant billboard in front of my face, but I can opt out of this technology, and I think many people will.
Thanks.
Okay, so another for the pro. I think Terrence is totally right. It's on us to figure out the best way to realize this creatively. But, as alternate reality becomes a part of the devices we carry around every day, and platforms like Facebook and Google make it more commonplace and more mainstream, it seems inevitable that this hyper-reality is on its way. And it is the future for advertising. I think the big thing is that advertising's always embraced new storytelling formats and new kind of creative mediums. So it is on us to figure out the best way to kind of realize it creatively, but it definitely gives us all the opportunity to make work that's more contextual, that kind of brings brands into people's lives in more valuable ways. For us, we just recently worked with the Gorillas on an AR app for them, and it wasn't an opt-in definitely experience, but it was one that helped to dimensionalize their album launch and kind of gave fans a new way to interact with the brand. or the band. So I think it's definitely, coming for advertising. It's just more how we bring it to life, and it's got to be in a way that any good advertising still brings value to regular people. So as long as it's not as dystopian as it might have been in the film, where it's imposing all of these horrible messages at you, but feels more relevant and valuable to your life, it seems like it will be just another great storytelling format for us, because advertising is all about kind of helping to just tell great stories. And if this new technology, once we can transcend the form that it comes in, and the technology becomes a little bit more invisible, and the application of it is more valuable to our lives, it seems inevitable that more brands will embrace it. We just need the great first examples to kind of help take us there.
Excellent, thank you.
Well, first of all, it's a great piece, a great film, and I listened to your talk yesterday. It's really thought-provoking, and it's actually really intense. When I watched it the first time, I needed to force me to really continue to look at it, because it's an intense piece. And now we look at it in our traditional screen format. So if you think how immersive this will be when it's in hyper reality. It is probably something what we not even know, how humans can take that. So my first point about on the negative side is that those experiences which are hyper reality, they are so much more immersive and intense that the question is, will human brains even be able to do that? That's not really researched, and we get to look into that. The other point, what I was thinking right away is, because when we're honest, most of the advertising we have right now out there in the internet, for example, when you think about how ads are served, how many hundreds of millions of ads are served daily, and all of them are crap, or most of them are crap. So my second point is, who is going to create all that fantastic content, in a hyper reality? Because maybe AI, I guess, then, because it's not us guys here in Cannes, because the world you were depicting was amazing, with incredible 17 different layers for one street only. So there needs to be somebody who really creates better content, and now we have even tremendous problems in creating good content for our formats right now. So I think that will be kind of a big problem here. And then the last thing is about the ethical question as well. Are we really want to do this? Are we really want to live in, okay, when we talk about ad serving, it's one thing, but we know that it's going much far and much beyond that. So the question will be, do we really want to, shift our identities and don't know anymore at some point what is real and what is not real, and live in different kind of bubbles? And is that actually a good thing for our societies? So the technology is coming, but I think the future of advertising as it's now, hopefully not, at least not in the way you depicted it. And thank you, great film.
Thanks, Tobias.
So I've got to summarize our side and clinch it, basically, right? Yeah. I'm going to nail it. I think it's interesting, that philosophical point that you raised, and your film is brilliant in doing that for me. And many of you will have heard of the conversation in Silicon Valley about the Hippocratic Oath for developers. Have you heard this stuff? That the software that we're making is so pervasive and so habitual and so addictive that it's driving us into behaviors that might not be good for us. Yesterday I was crossing the road by the Palais, and the guy's like, hey man, you're on Facebook, you're not looking at the road. And I guess that's true. So we have the ability to be very much swamped by the software. But I think ultimately I have a very strong sense of, and that's why I'm on the pro camp, a very strong sense of our own individual ability to switch stuff off. Like, we know when to put the phone down, right? You know when to not look at your screen, and I think that'll be the same, which is we're actually very good at getting rid of the things that we don't like in our lives. So it's kind of an opportunity, actually, I think, for not necessarily the future of advertising, but how you might choose to wear a particular brand and wear it, and that's part of your identity. I like the idea of a brand layer through the whole thing, which is, I'm going to Nikeify my whole hyperreal experience, for example. Or maybe I'll HSBC it, whatever you choose, right? But I find that really interesting, that you could choose a brand, and then you'd be choosing a brand that would give you a design experience that was simple. Like, why would you choose the hectic one? I'd pay a bit more for the cool, simple one. And maybe that's quite useful to me. And we're not going to talk necessarily, maybe in the questions after, there's so much opportunity to think about education, about healthcare, in respect of what we're looking at here. The contextual layer that could make our lives more interesting. And so I think it's going to be good. Don't get suckered in.
Thanks.
Yeah. Well, look, I'm not a dinosaur, and I think yes, the blending of the digital and physical is going to happen, or I think it's already in full swing. And I appreciate the film, and I think it's very thought-provoking and a great piece. Though I just don't think it's going to manifest in any way it's been depicted in the movie. So I think it's going to be less invasive and less intrusive, almost like invisible. So I assume many people have seen the movie Her, where you almost have like an AI personal assistant, sort of like learning you and guiding you through your everyday life. And I think as part of that, there's going to be like highly personalized and targeted content that is for you, and there's certainly an opportunity for marketers to be part of that. But the question is, it can't be annoying. There's got to be value to it, and I think it's going to be a lot more subtle than sort of like depicted in the film. And with that, I just sort of like want to raise a couple of concerns, in particular around this notion of like living in your echo chamber, in your bubble. So the more people have like really highly personalized content and only surround themselves with other people who think differently or might have similar interests. I mean, we've seen it with the recent elections, right, in the UK as well as the US, where that's sort of like dangerous territory, right? And then we've seen it already today. It's sort of like when you look at like young kids with their mobile devices, they all have a little bit of ADD. They're freaking out if they don't have the device to play with it. There is already so many people who live in alternate realities already. They have multiple online IDs, whether it's chats or Second Life or the gaming industry. So I think there is already sort of like that thing in full effect, and it makes you wonder what sort of like threats or dangers that poses to society if you sort of like can't distinguish between like reality and sort of like that virtual reality. And we've seen it manifest in like kids shooting in high schools and being lonely, and the question is, how do we cope with it, right? So how do we cope sort of like with that notion? And that's my time.
Great, thanks very much everybody. The thing that I've found quite interesting about this is actually this is probably the third or fourth time I've watched the movie. And the first time I watched it, I found that it was really full on, and I found it quite difficult to watch. And even just watching it this time, each time I watch it, for me, it actually kind of makes more and more sense. I can really understand that this could be something that will actually happen. And I think the ADD thing's a perfect example. I mean, kids are flooded by information, so maybe for them this won't be so overpowering. I mean, Facebook's released their AR platform now, so we all know this is actually going to happen. I guess the question and the thing that, Kechi, if I can sort of, hopefully I'm not going to talk out of turn, but I guess what you're trying to get across is to make people think about what we're going to do with AR. So the question necessarily isn't, is AR going to happen, and is this hyper-reality what it's going to end up being like, or is there something in between that?
I do think a big part of this is it comes down to user control, and I think we really need to enable that, because it comes back to your point about content. I think that content is the critical element here. Is we want to have content that is relevant to that user, and not just have this sort of mass market approach where you're getting served up, banner ads and the things that we're seeing right now that have been around for 20 years, and for 20 years we've questioned their value. That can't continue when we get into this environment where it's much more immersive. Giving that user control where they can sort of wipe away some sort of completely non-relevant content makes the device that much more valuable, right? When we start having those tools in front of you where the context, whether it's from a brand or it's an educational piece or medical, is adding value to that person's life, then it's a helpful technology. And I think we just need to kind of steer it in that direction. And those of us who are working in advertising and marketing, we have a very big responsibility to make sure that happens, that we're developing good content, especially knowing that the developing content for AR is going to be a lot more challenging than it is today, right? You don't just, we had a Pixels of Fury event last night, right, where in 20 minutes we're making designs. That's going to be very difficult to do in a quality way in augmented reality.
Yeah. I guess the other thing too is the brands themselves, and I guess the industry in itself, the creatives are in there. They're still living in in a place where a lot of advertising agencies still focus on TV ads, and that's still sort of the thing that they want to aim for. I mean, how do advertising agencies start to even think about how they can do this? How can they put AR as a part of their media schedule?
Well, I mean, I think I agree. I mean, the last thing a brand wants to do is to become annoying, right? So you kind of really have to find that balance between sort of like being useful and non-intrusive, right? And I can certainly foresee that we're just gonna go beyond much smarter ways of like serving up relevant contextual content, whether it's based on geolocation or mood or the situation you're personally in, to sort of like be helpful in guiding to give you like a better experience. And sort of like the old briefs of like, well, I need a targeted ad campaign and I need an X amount of viewports and form factors. I just don't think it's going to happen that way. So there's going to be much cleverer sort of like manifestations of like, you know, designing content and communicating that content in a less intrusive way. And that's going, I don't know. I mean, we're going to see how it's going to develop, but the world's developing so fast. So I think let's see where we're at in 2-3 years when we're meeting here again.
Does anybody else anything else they'd like to add? Or?
As a someone running a creative agency, I guess, I thought the question was kind of how could someone that does advertising get into this reality? You know, ultimately, great communications, great ads have a contract. For me, they have a contract with the viewer, a soft contract, which is I'm going to show you something interesting or create something good for you, and you will engage with it. And if not, then don't waste my time. I don't see why this would be any different, right? In the old days, back in the old days of television advertising, you did something funny, and that was your excuse or your permission to be in someone's front room. I don't see why this would be any different, really. So I feel very confident about our ability to think about what we would do in this space. I think it's super exciting to have that other canvas to work in. We talk a lot at Grey about what is the cultural ambition for a brand, or how, what's the cultural impact that a brand wants to make, and being present in their lives is a great opportunity to do that. But you've got to do it in a way that's valuable. And you've seen things that we've done that sort of play into that, I think, and it's super exciting. Like, what does it mean? You saw some stuff we did for Cannes a few years ago with Volvo and Life Paint, right? Like, what's the cycle safety story in AR? Pretty cool, right? I think we could do that. In fact, maybe I should brief it.
I mean, there is, of course, we want to do valuable stuff, and we want to be useful and relevant and entertaining for people and all that. That's clear. But then right now, of course, we try to do that for a long time, but there is still this tactical level, which is just, bombarding people because there are sales pressures. And I wonder how we're going to handle that part in hyper reality. Of course, I agree, it's a wonderful, canvas, and it's a great technology, and the technology is much more further, actually, than we are, or the content creation part is. And of course, we have seen that with social networks and all that stuff, which is pretty mature now, and so we're gonna see how that happens. But I guess there is still, this technical level of pressuring people of, buying stuff, and we need to make sure that this is not visually polluting our lives, and not only visually polluting it, but in general. I mean, I have this philosophy at our agency. It's zero marketing pollution is our goal. Like you said, we want to not be annoying and all. But when I see what the work we do of course some very good work and some lighthouse work and whatnot, and we're successful here. But still, we do also a lot of work which we have to do, which is nothing I would necessarily want to have myself in my life, because that's the business. So I think we need to see how that goes. But I'm not 100% sure that it's going to be a smooth ride.
So it sounds like everyone agrees that AR is actually going to be a part of the future. Does anyone want to put their head on the block and say when? Does anyone else have anything they'd like to add?
I actually have a question, sort of like for this side here, and I don't have the answer for that. But do you? We're already seeing like a trend to sort of like the more analog world going back. So, vinyl sales is like going up. There's like a whole DIY movement. People sort of like saying, I'm not really sure about this whole fashion mass production thing. And do we have like some corporate responsibilities to sort of like be a bit more in reality? So, and I do think we are, as marketers and creative guys and agencies, I do think we have a certain responsibility to sort of like, not forget about like the real human interaction experience. So I think we just can't sort of like blindly just like leverage the technology just because we can, but maybe so be a bit critical about, well, how can we actually enable real communication and real experiences between people, because we see that, in particular the younger generation seems to struggle at times to just like, have a regular conversation. I don't know, I just feel like creatively there's an opportunity for us as well as for brands to sort of like foster that as well. I'm just curious how you feel about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we're all saying that, we all believe that this could be great if we have the right content for it. What's interesting to me about AR as you compare it to VR even is that it is a more social medium, that it is something that can be shared by people, and in the same way that we might look at pictures on our phone for a second and somebody comes around you and you kind of huddle together, I think that this technology has the potential to kind of help unite people a little bit more in real world experiences. It's been amazing to see what on the education front people are starting to do with VR and AR, and that it makes it possible for classrooms to take field trips when they never could because it's so hard to just make that happen. So I think especially as you look at AR, it does seem like a more of the kind of reality platforms beyond the real world right now, that it feels like it has the potential to socialize and kind of help congregate people, potentially more so than some other technologies have in the past. So I think there's a lot of potential for it to feel less isolating and kind of more unifying. We just have to also give people credit that they might not turn into cyborgs, that they have some off switch too. But yeah, I think there's a lot of potential for it to be social.
I think we can give people credit. I think the thing that scares me the most is more about kids, and I think a few people have touched on it. As adults, we can kind of determine what we swipe away and what we let into our lives. But for me, I don't have kids, but if I did, I would kind of scare me their ability to be able to navigate this world and what they choose to opt in and opt out of, and how overwhelming it would be for them. I think that's an interesting topic of how we kind of manage it with kids.
Yeah, and two things to touch on there. I do think that with children, there is a whole other aspect of this. There's a physiological aspect where their brain is developing differently, right? And to some extent, that input of information can lead to certain sort of decisions that are not optimal, right? We need to really help teach kids values and making good decisions and being able to monitor kind of their access to that information. But going back to the reality question, I do think we also have to ask ourselves, though, what is reality, right? Because we've always defined reality by the outputs that are coming into us. The clothes that we wear, this yacht in the middle of, in southern France. This is just one other layer that's influencing what reality represents. And I think it might feel uncomfortable to us, but you think about those children who are, they're growing up with the smartphones, like their ability to sort of navigate multiple information at once and be in multiple conversations at once is pretty phenomenal. I know when smartphones came out, everyone's texting, and there were a lot of people that were questioning the value of this, and people aren't having conversations anymore, but they were absolutely having conversations. They were just conversations that weren't familiar to those of us who grew up without a smartphone. An emoji can carry a lot of emotion in it that some of us probably wouldn't necessarily read. So it's really just a kind of an evolution of communications in a way.
So normally in these in the debates, we at the end of it we have a vote. So is hyperreality the future of advertising? We can get a show of hands. That's brilliant. Thanks very much. And also just thank you to 90 Seconds who did the filming today. Thank you.